I'm Jordan Hatfield. This is Faster Film Critic. Today on the show, we talk Death of a Unicorn with Kolter and Chase Fugel. Death of a Unicorn is a 2025 dark comedy directed by Alex Sharfman, starring Jenna Ortega, Paul Rudd, and Will Poulter. I ran over a unicorn once. Get in. We're going cinephiling. Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Oh, you bastard, Jordan. Is that true?
You want to glaze over that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, man. I hit it, and it stumbled off into the woods before I had time to cut off its horn and snort myself to the fifth dimension.
Whacked it with the tire iron.
Snort myself.
Oh, Death of a Unicorn. Where do we even begin? What do you guys think?
Chase, take it away, man.
Dude, I don't even know where to begin with this movie.
Yeah.
It was a trip.
So my expectations going to this, guys, I'm not going to lie, were pretty low.
Yeah.
Really?
When we decided, hey, let's podcast on Death of a Unicorn, I was like, oh, man, okay. Like, it didn't seem like my type of movie.
Okay.
I think any film with the name Death of a Unicorn deserves low expectations.
I was the opposite, man. I had high expectations.
Really?
2 reasons. It was an A24 movie.
Yes.
And 2, a very, very promising cast. The only thing that I was
Yes.
doubtful about was Alex Sharfman. You know, this being his directorial debut, I was like, you go either way. And it definitely went one way over the other.
You know, I did really like this cast.
Yeah.
I don't know that it could have been better cast. There are weaknesses in the film that, of course, we will talk.
Yeah.
The people that were brought in to act in this movie were absolutely perfect for their parts.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Anthony Kerrigan was completely wasted in this. Everybody else was, did pretty good, but Anthony Kerrigan, who played Griff, the butler,
Yeah.
if you guys have watched Barry at all on HBO, you know he's outstanding in that
haven't.
show.
Okay, so I haven't seen Barry. I was just going to ask, what else have you seen him in?
Yeah, primarily Barry. I think he was in the newest Bill and Ted's Excellent Awesome Journey, whatever it might be. He's got excellent comedic timing. He's very sincere and was just totally wasted in this.
Bummer. I did feel like his character was probably the weakest.
Yeah.
I think all the characters were pretty weak, to be honest.
Yeah, okay.
I think the best performance was Will Poulter
Yeah, easily.
by a long shot for me.
Yeah.
I thought he was really good. And it's funny because from the trailer, the little glimpses that it showed me of him,
Yeah.
I was like, he's going to annoy me.
Oh,
Really?
I expected him to annoy me, and he didn't.
Yeah.
He was great throughout. His character was great.
Yeah. Yeah, he delivers his lines really well. Probably better than anybody else. Tia Leone, which it was nice to see her back in something again. She had a couple of good moments, but it definitely worked best, as an over-the-top satire of rich and privileged buttholes. That's when it was kind of focusing on, and not some of the other stuff. It was odd hodgepodge of ideas and themes.
Yeah, a lot of different themes here. The film could never really settle on one, it felt like.
Yeah.
You're right in saying that it is over the top and heavy-handed in its
Yeah.
themes. You've got the elite with their false morals and their greed
Yeah.
and their willingness to just sacrifice anything and everyone to obtain more resources and more assets and
Right.
more wealth and more power. The father, Elliot, played by Paul Rudd, very tropish.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought his character, the writing around his character was weak.
Sure.
We all love Paul Rudd. I mean,
Yeah.
he can be really funny,
Yeah.
but there just wasn't enough depth to him. He was
Yeah.
too one-dimensional.
And boring. It was kind of a waste of him as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some fairly effective sentimental moments with him and his daughter towards the end, but it took so long to get there that you kind of just don't care by the time you do.
And it wasn't at all unpredictable. I mean, from the very start, you see this strained
Right.
connection between the two of them, and you know the way
Yeah.
the movie's going to
Yeah,
end.
exactly.
They're going to hug each other, and it's all going to be good.
Jenna Ortega's doing more Jenna Ortega things. She's very similar to everything she's always done.
said.
But I will say there are some of the funniest moments in this movie to me, not the funniest, but some of the more enjoyable moments were the subtleties in Jenna Ortega's mannerisms. You know, when something shocking happens and she just takes a hit from her vapor. And just the look on her face. And it's so subtle, and yet she just nails it. Or when something happens and she's like, fuck. And just the way she delivers that line. I mean, it's hard to do that, and subtlety there, but I really enjoyed those aspects. And she does that in everything she does. So, again, nothing new, but...
I think Ortega is greatly underused, actually. Like,
Yes.
some amazing performances from her in X.
Yeah.
X is probably my favorite thing I've seen her in.
Okay.
But there was something about her character that I just cannot get over that just bugged me. And it's like the camera was biased in the way that it showed everybody. And what I mean by that is it so often, like the entire movie, the butt of each joke and everything is because of these wealthy people's entitlement or arrogance and whatever. But there's a lot of time that she is really self-righteous, really entitled, and it doesn't show that reflection on her. Like it completely ignores that. And it'll make fun of it in some areas and show it as virtuous in others, which was a really weird thing.
It could be the novice kind of status of the director and executing writing, or it doesn't have as much fun with its plot and premise as it could have, and it doesn't have a strong approach to its themes and its ideas. So some of that stuff really kind of, it's like they start cooking it and then they drop the plate on the floor and there's shit all over the place, and there are a lot of balls have been dropped throughout this movie, I think.
Speaking of characters, I can't not mention Steve Park as Dr. Song.
Okay.
He does nothing in here noteworthy, but he was so good in Fargo that every single time he comes on screen, I hear Mike Yanagita.
Yeah.
Just hear it every time. Every time. Look, there's Dr. Mike Yanagita.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of themes in this movie. You know, it's kind of a monster movie. It's dark in ways.
Yeah.
It's definitely a comedy. It's trying to say something about the rich elite. It feels like a horror movie in places.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of people say that this didn't work for them. And I definitely agree that the film is messy in that way. It never, it doesn't know exactly what it wants to be. And so it never really fully develops anything. But I did find a quirkiness and a fun aspect of this movie despite that.
Yeah.
And I will say, I started by saying my expectations for this film were really low. It was better than I expected, for me personally.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I enjoyed the film. I had more fun with this film than I expected to have.
Interesting. Well, I think when it dives into how stupid it is, it does kind of work. Yeah, when it kind of leans into it, there are moments that either work really well or are close to working or could work, and it's,
I do think the CGI unicorns looked pretty bad.
Oh, God. Steaming crap, unfortunately. Steaming.
A lot of the effects, most of them were steaming crap. And then they were like, it looked like there were a few that they actually did practical.
Yeah,
which I did like and I enjoyed seeing, but it made the CGI look that much worse in comparison.
It's got to be the other way around. It's got to be majority practical and minority CGI for that to work. You can't go the other way around because you said it very well. It's exactly what happens.
So Elliot and Ridley hit something with their car, and they get out to see what it is, and it turns out it's a baby unicorn. And I expected it to be more cute, something a little bit more cartoonish and magical, but it was terrible. It looked more like a mutated offspring from the beast of Neverending Story.
It did. Yeah, it did.
I do think the idea of having these beautiful, wonderful, magical creatures, these happy unicorns, turn dark and play the violent, destructive monsters in this movie was a really interesting idea. Yeah. I don't know that it fully worked for me, but I'm going to give it props for creativity.
I don't know that they explain the theme of, the unicorns when we see the parental beasts show up. They're dark in color and they're far more menacing looking. And then towards the end of the movie, they turn white again and then scamper off into the woods. So a lot of that lore was so poorly developed beyond what Ridley was trying to share through her research into these tapestries. And that stuff was just so loosely connected and underexplained. It just kind of was like, what? Why? What was...
Yeah, there was a lot of that underexplained. But then there were like a lot of areas where it overexplained to the point where there was nothing for the viewer to think about. It was like, so this is what's happening. This is the message I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Knowing about the unicorn tapestries before seeing this movie, I wish it would have been a little bit more subtle. I think it would have been kind of a cool, if you know kind of thing, and it wouldn't spoil the plot of the movie right away.
Yeah.
But when she explains it, like near the beginning.
Yeah.
This film is far from perfect. There are definitely weaknesses throughout, but I felt like the biggest weakness was the ending. Going into the third act, I will say I felt like had the third act been stronger, a lot of the earlier weaknesses in the film could have been forgiven, in my opinion.
Okay.
I hadn't given up on the film going into the third act, but It just felt really flat. Narratively speaking, it was weak.
Yeah.
It was predictable. It was a letdown. The ending didn't work for me. It was the biggest weakness, in my opinion.
And I feel the same way. You know, I think a few years ago that new Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio movie came out, and we had a conversation about it. And as soon as a film introduces this idea of, in Pinocchio, it was immortality, but this idea of being able to like heal yourself or come back from death, whatever, it loses any tether to reality. Like any emotional weight that a situation could have, like a death or somebody getting really injured, is like completely undercut by, the unicorn could come in and just heal them.
You know, this film is very magical, and yet it's simultaneously very grounded in reality. And that is definitely difficult to navigate when we're talking about, these kind of themes. It's tricky. So I hear you there. One thing that I failed to really grasp, I felt like it was just greatly underdeveloped, was the connection between Ridley and the unicorns. Like, I know she touches their horn and experience something with them. It's going on from there. Like, why? What's this connection about, and what does it mean? And that was all just really underdeveloped. So definitely some problems here. The film is not getting a lot of love. 55% of critics like it, and 75% of audiences approve, which is a little higher than I would have expected. But it was incredibly violent. Far more than I expected. Like, it was pretty gruesome. There were some scenes in here that were like, dang.
Yeah. Some better than others. I'm getting a little tired of seeing CGI blood all over the place.
You want to see real unicorn blood.
Yeah. I want to see real brains getting squished out of people. Exactly. So, physical blood effects splashing that on people has got to be not only better, well, it is better looking, but it's got to be cheaper than having some artist sit there and create that in a computer. I don't understand why that's so overused.
I do want to throw some love to St. Vincent. She wrote an original song for this called DOA. I thought it was great. Are you guys familiar with St. Vincent?
No.
Yeah, she's got some really good stuff. Not all of her stuff is great. I like her upbeat stuff a little bit more than her slower, mellow stuff. But check St. Vincent out. She's really good.
I like the music in this movie. I think it was right as the title card came on at the start, and it was the Cocteau. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the Cocteau Twins song. I love that song. That was like a good like some recognition right there.
Well, guys, let's rate Death of a Unicorn on a scale of 1 to 5. Tell me what you think.
I think I went in with the expectations of a 2-star movie, and I think that's about what I got. A 2-star film.
Well, it's a pretty mixed bag. I had high expectations going into this because, as mentioned earlier, it's an A24 film with a pretty loaded cast of talented actors. Most of the jokes just didn't work for me. Outside of Will Poulter, I think delivers probably some of the best lines in the movie. But the cast makes it work well enough to be mildly entertaining, but I definitely expected more. So I'm going to land at a 2.5.
So as I said, my expectations going into this film were low, but I was surprised. It exceeded my expectations. This is not a great movie. It's definitely over the top. It's heavy-handed in its message. It's nothing magical. But the film had some laughs, and I had a good time at the movie theater. So I'm going to come in at a 3. As long as you can overlook some of these weaknesses in the film, sit back, relax, enjoy some popcorn, and have a good time with this one. I think it does that. It's worth a watch. Maybe not 2, but 3 stars from me. But guys, before we end, we got some fan mail.
We just got a letter.
We just got a letter.
We just got a letter. Wonder who it's from.
It's from Parker. Thank you for the email, Parker. He wants to know which directors we would put on our personal Mount Rushmores, our directorial Mount Rushmores. 4 directors, who would we name?
Oh my, okay.
That is a great question.
It is a great question.
Yeah, this is an elemental question for a group of movie dorks such as us.
Kolter, what directors are on your Mount Rushmore?
My directors are... Number 1, Steven Spielberg. Maybe it's a no-brainer. Maybe it's too easy, but his work spans expertly across multiple genres. Come on. Can anybody argue that? Number 1, Steven Spielberg. Number 2, this is a little tricky because usually they're a brotherly duo, but I went with Joel Coen. The Coen brothers, their movies are characterized by sharp dialogue, quirky characters, and have just made some masterful, very unique cinematic journeys. So I can't leave him off that. Number 3, because I can't have it stacked full of white guys, Akira Kurosawa.
Ooh, oh, wow.
I would call Kurosawa probably a titan in world cinema. You know, his influence extends to Eastern and Western cinema. And I had the pleasure of seeing Dreams and Hidden Fortress in a theater at a museum that I worked at. So influential, I can't imagine, you know, some of the more famous movies from Spielberg and George Lucas, to include Star Wars, probably wouldn't have existed without Kurosawa's work. The 4th, this is going to be controversial. This is not necessarily somebody I chose because I think he's the best director of all time. You fellas won't be surprised, but I'm not choosing this person for his filmography. I'm choosing him for a singular work, and that work is Ghostbusters, which is, in my opinion, one of the most perfect movies in existence. It is one of the most revered comedy horrors in movie history, and is very close to one of the most unique and perfect concepts expertly brought to life by Mr. Ivan Reitman.
Wow. I was not expecting that one.
Yeah, that's a great four. I like your
Oh,
mountain.
thank you so much.
I like your
I
mountain.
do too.
Kolter.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, fellers.
Chase, who's on your Mount Rushmore?
I would have to start with one that is probably no surprise, Martin Scorsese. I mean, gosh, he knows how to make a movie. There is so much I love about his movies, and as he gets older, his movies change a lot. They've changed so much, from Taxi Driver and Mean Streets and all that to Killers of the Flower Moon. Completely different from each other.
Yeah.
But they still feel so Scorsese, and they're all 5 stars. I mean, not every movie of his is 5 stars, but his range is so good. And then my next would be Tarantino.
Okay.
I mean, I would argue that is the faster film critic director right there, Tarantino. If you listen to our Hateful Eight episode, you know how much we all like Tarantino. He knows how to make an entertaining movie. His screenplays are unlike anything I've ever seen before. His witty dialogue. My next, I'd have to say, David Lynch.
Sure.
Wow.
The King of Weird. There. I watched Blue Velvet the first time and hated it and hoped I never had to experience it again. And then I revisited it, and it's one of my favorite movies. Weird. And also, Mulholland Drive is another one of his movies that, like, I mean, you hear pretentious film students talk about it all the time, and I wanted to love it so much. I had watched it 3 times. Each time, I think I gave it like a 2.5 or a 3, somewhere in there. I just couldn't get it. And not that long ago, I watched it again, and it clicked for me. And it was so weird. I've never had that experience where I feel like I've seen a movie fully 3 different times, and then revisit it one more time after that and view it completely different than I did any time before.
Yeah, interesting.
It's hard to put these in any order.
Yeah.
I think if I could keep one of them and the rest of them disappear, I would choose Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick is by far so amazing, so meticulous.
Yes.
His movies feel really based in reality, like you're watching real people, but they also lean into this almost dreamlike kind of storytelling that I love so much about David Lynch. There are these elements that are ambiguous that leave you questioning, but they're intentional. Yeah, I think he's a director that's perfectly balanced.
Great list, man.
It's a good mountain. All right, Jordan, let's see your mountain.
Guys, these are some big mountains, and there's a little bit of overlap. Joel Cohen is one I definitely thought long and hard about putting on the mountain of mine. Okay. Stanley Kubrick definitely deserves to be there.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm asked to put together something like this, a top 5 list or a Mount Rushmore, there's always this conflict of emotions. Do I put the best directors? Do I put my favorite directors? And oftentimes these are different. Do I put the most influential directors? Like, what criteria do I use to pick 4 out of so many amazing and influential directors in the world?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure which route I decided on this time, but here we go. Number 1. So again, in no particular order. Number 1, I have to put Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
He's not one of my favorite directors necessarily, but his filmography is so inspiring.
Yeah.
I mean, so many of his movies are just massive in the universe of cinema and movies and filmmaking. And I mean, Jaws and Jurassic Park and Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. and Schindler's List. I mean, some of these movies are big cinema at a time when big cinema didn't really exist.
Correct.
In this way.
Well put.
I don't know if you guys have seen The Fabelmans.
I have.
No.
Dude, check that movie out. The Fabelmans is about Steven Spielberg when he was young.
Okay.
And
oh, wait. I think I have seen that. Yeah.
I really loved that movie. And it just made me like Steven Spielberg even more. There's a lot of stuff he's done, particularly recently, that I haven't loved. But, man, he is a director that I have just an immense amount of respect for. He seems like such a cool guy.
Yeah.
You're right, Kolter. He's got to be on the mountain. Martin Scorsese. I would consider him the best director of all time if I had to name one. Martin Scorsese is just the man.
So good.
Cinema today would be so different without Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
He has just made such an impact on the industry and love everything that he does. Absolutely amazing. Quentin Tarantino, I would say, is the best character writer in all of Hollywood.
Okay.
He has got style that is just so cool. Like, no one has tried to copy another director like they've tried to copy Quentin Tarantino. He is just, man.
Yeah.
And for my fourth, I'm going Billy Wilder.
Oh, okay.
I love me some Billy Wilder, man.
Okay.
This guy
All right.
has got a comedic intelligence like few other. He is so creative. His stories are so fun. I love Billy Wilder. I love his stories. So that would be my Mount Rushmore of directors.
Okay.
Now, Parker, he asked us to name our own individual Mount Rushmores, but he also asked us to go a step further and decide a Mount Rushmore for Faster Film Critic. So there's some overlap between us, which is great and expected. If we were to name 4 directors to represent Faster Film Critic, what 4 directors would they be?
Oh, we got to be careful with this one.
Parker, you rascal, you.
We're going to be giving it the Faster Film Critic seal of approval. This is permanent. We got to be.
Well, let me throw out just a suggestion, and then we can debate it.
Okay.
I propose that we name Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, and Billy Wilder. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, yeah, that seems completely unbiased and very impartial. Yeah. Yeah, let's just go with that.
We got to start somewhere. So let's start here. Steven Spielberg?
I would agree with this, yes.
Martin Scorsese?
Yeah. Kolter didn't have Martin Scorsese on his list.
Yeah, he didn't.
Roger Corman.
He didn't.
I didn't. So, yeah, man. Spielberg, he's got to be on there. If we're going to have to pit Scorsese and Tarantino together, because there are some similarities there, right? Between the two of them, just a little bit. Does Scorsese edge Tarantino out? Ooh.
That's a tough question.
Yeah, I don't know that I could go there, guys. I'll just keep my mouth shut if I have to. But let's start here. We all agree that all of these directors deserve to be on our individual Mount Rushmores. There is no director here that we're going to, throw tomatoes at. However, is there a director? Let's start just trying to nix people out. Is there any director that we would agree as a group probably isn't a best fit for our combined Mount Rushmore?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
No. I was like,
all right, look, if I have to be completely objective about this, and it's going to break my heart, and as soon as we're done, I'm going to cry. Moving Ivan Reitman over to the Faster Film Critic Mount Rushmore, I don't know if he makes the cut. I am so biased, and I realize that. So maybe he doesn't go over.
I love David Lynch so much, and he's a perfect fit for my Mount Rushmore. And there are so many people that just wouldn't get it.
True.
And I'm going to say Billy Wilder. As much as I love Billy Wilder, I think he's probably one to come off of the group mountain.
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all agree that Steven Spielberg belongs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am perfectly okay with Joel Coen, and I'm perfectly okay with Stanley Kubrick.
All right, let's consider the influence of Kubrick films. Coen brother films are kind of their own thing. Nobody has really emulated them to any degree of success. I think Kubrick might edge out Joel Coen.
I'm not going to argue with you guys personally. I prefer Joel Coen and the Coen brothers to Stanley Kubrick, but I would definitely agree that Stanley Kubrick has had a much bigger influence on cinema, and he is wildly considered top 5 directors of all time. So I would definitely agree Stanley Kubrick belongs there.
There we go. I'm happy.
Okay, so we've got Steven Spielberg and Stanley Kubrick. We got 2 more spots, guys.
I like this idea that Kolter had that Scorsese and Tarantino are pretty similar in a lot of ways. And it would be hard to have a list where we have the both of them on there.
I can't imagine a list where they're both not on there.
That's
this is going to be a tough
thing.
one. For me. This is a tough one for me. I fundamentally disagree with Kolter's suggestion here. I think we settle with both. So one of us has got to give.
Huh?
One of us has got to give. It'll be me. Who do we pick of the 2?
So let's maybe this will help. Let's take Goodfellas versus Pulp Fiction. If you had to choose for one of those movies to exist and the other to not exist, which would they be?
Oh, I mean, I'd have to say Goodfellas. What about you, Jordan?
I'd have to say Pulp Fiction. As much as Goodfellas is an incredible movie and my favorite gangster movie of all time, one of my top 5 movies, I would say, although there's probably 60 movies in my top 5, Tarantino and Pulp Fiction, everything Tarantino does is it for me. I absolutely...
It's so cool.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know how...
So that you just bring up a really good point. Tarantino, in his entire filmography, maybe hasn't made a stinker. Maybe Scorsese has made some films
that
good. aren't as consistently good as Tarantino's. Does that help us get there?
Oh, gosh. Oh, making it so hard.
Okay, let's shift gears just a little bit.
Okay, we're getting into the weeds.
Let's table this conversation and figure out who our other director is going to be.
Okay.
Because who is better than Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese? Like, one of these guys we've decided has to come off. So who goes on in their place? Who's that guy?
So we got Wilder, we got Kurosawa.
We kicked Wilder off, we kicked Lynch off, and we kicked off Ivan Reitman.
Gosh, how...
So who do we have left?
Kurosawa.
Yeah, Kurosawa. Coen brothers.
Joel, I think we kicked him off, although that hurts me. But we did kick him off. So do we put Kurosawa on there?
I'm going to make a case for Kurosawa just to mix it up a little bit.
You know, I think I agree with you. I think Kurosawa should be there.
I think Kurosawa is an amazing director.
Okay.
Again, one of these directors that is like top 5 on everyone's list in Hollywood.
Sure.
I just find very little entertainment value in his movies. I have a hard time watching them.
I might add to that there's not a whole lot of variance either. This one kind of goes into the influential category, I think.
Yeah, never in a million years would I have a bunch of friends come over and be like, dude, let's throw on a Kurosawa film. Yeah. Grab your popcorn.
You guys want to sit around and watch Seven Samurai for 5 hours?
Yeah. Like, this is a film student's director. This is a director's director. This isn't a general audience director.
Yeah.
Incredibly made films. Like, I give him all the respect in the world. He's just not my flavor. He's just not my cup of tea.
All right.
That doesn't mean he doesn't have to be there. I can be outvoted here, right? I'm not saying.
I think it's a strong argument. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that knocks Ivan Reitman and Kurosawa off my list, leaving Joel Coen. What do you guys got left?
I've got Lynch.
We knocked Lynch off
and
already.
Wilder?
And Wilder off already. Which means by default it's Tarantino and Scorsese.
Wow.
Well, are we breaking out the hammers and chisels and finishing this monument up or what?
Here's my problem is I suggested Tarantino and Scorsese and you both pushed back. And so I don't want to end up with Tarantino and Scorsese. And you guys pissed at me the whole time that you're chiseling on these two faces.
This guy.
Whoa, who's saying that we're going to be chiseling and you're going to be watching?
No, we're all going to be chiseling. But I don't want you guys pissed at me as we're chiseling.
Okay.
So, all right.
I say we scratch everything and just put Paul Thomas Anderson on there.
P.T. Anderson and Roger Corman.
You can also make a case for David Fincher.
Oh, yeah, I almost.
Okay, we're complicating it way too much.
All right, Tarantino, Scorsese. Is there any world in which we sub one of those out for Joel Coen?
I would not argue if you guys want to. I love Joel Coen.
I would argue against that.
Okay, and I think it's time, gents.
So is that it?
We gotta get Congress to sign off on this so we can get to work. What do you think?
I think we got our answer.
Is that our list?
We could also talk Sergio Leone.
Oh, dude. Yeah, we're going to be here all day.
Alfred Hitchcock.
I know. I thought I had that in my list too originally. So it's Spielberg, Kubrick, Scorsese, Tarantino.
I think that covers a lot of ground.
It's just as diverse as the existing Mount Rushmore.
So there it is, the Faster film critic Mount Rushmore. We got Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, and Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, man. Okay, there we go. There it is, fellas. All right, we did it. Hey, all right.
Big shout out to Parker. Thanks for putting us through that. We would love to hear your thoughts on our Mount Rushmore and Death of a Unicorn.
All right, going back to Death of a Unicorn. If you're jonesing for a better horror comedy with a mythical creature, I am recommending 2015's Krampus, directed by Michael Dougherty. I know, it's not Christmas, and I don't give a crap. It stars Adam Scott, Toni Collette, and David Koechner. And this movie does everything better than Death of a Unicorn to the writing, directing, acting, and creature effects. Check it out.
Thank you for listening to Faster Film Critic, and please join us next week when we talk Fight Club, directed by David Fincher, starring Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, and Helena Bonham Carter. You can also follow us on Letterboxd, Cinetrack, and Instagram. Email us at fasterfilmcritic@gmail.com. Hit us up with questions, comments, feedback, or review requests, and please share this episode with your movie-loving friends.